Hello and welcome to GoalTime. This is a show about ordinary people achieving extraordinary success. It is not a show about events or things going on in your town or certain projects, goals. This is about people and what makes people tick. I honestly believe that if you spend enough time with people and you care and you choose to listen and ask the right questions, you can dig deep and find stories inside of people that are fascinating. And my first two guests certainly fit that bill. They have more stories than you can count. Please welcome Josh and Amy Degen. Welcome.
Thanks,
Jim.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you're here. I initially contacted you guys because of your work in Poland, which we will get to. But after sitting down with you in preparation for the show, I uncovered so many other interesting stories about you guys as well. You certainly don't have a shortage of stories. All the way back to even your marriage and even before that. How long have you guys been married now?
Josh, remember?
I would like to say
Oh,
38 years.
Good job.
hey, good answer. Ding, ding, 6
ding.
bonus points. So in those years, even before you were married, you came up with a really interesting story that had me doubled over in laughter about how you met.
Yes.
Are you willing to share that? Could you tell
Absolutely.
everyone about that?
So one of my closest friends, I went to Wheaton College, and one of my closest friends went on March break and went skiing and met a guy named Brad who had a friend named Josh.
Mm-hmm.
And for a couple weeks, Brad kept calling me on my phone because her phone, Monica's phone, was broken, and he started calling me Josh's wife as a joke.
Okay.
So when he finally came to visit, he dragged me into Boston and said, "You have to meet Josh." Meanwhile, Josh never heard anything about me. So Josh was parked between the Public Garden and the Boston Common, and he rolled down the window, and Brad dared me to say, "Hi, I'm Josh's wife," for $5. So I said, "That's easy." So I put my hand out. I said, "Hi, I'm Josh's wife. $5, please." And that's how I met Josh.
You introduced yourself to him as his wife.
Yes.
Yes.
How did you receive that communication?
I'm like, what is going on here? And I looked in my rearview mirror, and she's walking backwards, and then I see that she walked up to Brad and Monica, and I'm like, I got fixed up on a blind date here.
Yes, he did.
That is a
He
ride.
was 17, I was 18.
Wow, amazing. And
Yeah.
who would have guessed that introduction would have actually led to courtship, marriage, 36 years?
True. We never were able to tell Brad. We never found him. They broke up 2 weeks later. So he doesn't even know that we're... So Brad, if you're out there.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
so he doesn't even
Brad
know that
May,
he fixed us.
we want you.
Yeah. We wanted to know that was a great fix-up.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, you need to make that happen. But even with Facebook and all the ways of getting in
Yeah,
touch
we-
with
Internet searches, white pages, Facebook, Instagram. This guy dropped off the face of the earth.
Wow, that's amazing. 30 seconds into the show, amazing story number one, right? So we're going to talk about you guys as individuals because you've both overcome adversity. You've had to face some obstacles. You've had successes. This show is really about the human experience and that all of this life journey happens to all of us. Do you believe that everyone has a story,
Absolutely.
right?
At least
At least
one.
Exactly. So my hope is that we share those stories and we are free and willing to not only talk about the good times and the successes, but also the struggles and the hardships and the obstacles and the adversity in hopes to be an inspiration and give others, hope and reason for trying as well. So I want to focus on you guys individually because I think there's fascinating stories there, but then collectively even more fascinating, especially what you guys are doing in Poland. We're going to talk all about that towards the end of the show. But starting out individually, Josh, would you mind sharing with everyone your current business, your current career experience?
I've owned a landscape construction company called Earthscape Landscaping since 1984. So we are entering our 42nd year, I believe.
Yeah.
And it started in Brighton, Mass. And when we moved to Groton in 1991, we opened a nursery on my property and expanded our base into, rather than cutting lawns, we specialize in hardscape landscape construction, which is walls, walkways, patios, plantings, drainage systems, ponds, things along those lines. And we service the greater Groton area, but we, go all the way up to New Hampshire and down to Cape Cod as well, too.
Yeah.
So that's what we do now. As an offshoot of that, about 5 or 6 years ago, I liquidated the old colonial stone yard here in Groton for the Croto family. And in the course of doing so, fell in love even more so with natural stone products like granite, bluestone, things like
And
that.
Groton is no shortage of granite, that's for sure.
So for the past 5 years on the side, I have been brokering other people's granite as well as purchasing and selling granite on the side, and then to Earthscape as well and installing it even more so. So I saw that there was a future in that and maybe an exit plan at some point in the future for getting out of Earthscape and into something that's a little easier on your body. So I just opened a business called New England Reclaimed Granite.
Okay.
And we specialize in salvage granite from old buildings, churches, municipal buildings, streets. We don't buy junk. We buy really high quality materials. It's just opened. It's at 51 Littleton Road in Ayer, Massachusetts. And we're open by appointment only. And that's the new business venture.
That's awesome. Well, congratulations on that. I can personally attest to the work that Josh does on the landscaping side. He's done a lot of work at our house, and it's beautiful. Interesting combination of knowing your stuff about materials, plants, trees and bushes and landscape, but also having the artistic side to know how it all goes together and what works, what doesn't. I just think you're really brilliant in that area. So
thank you so much.
I hope
for
you
the
don't
time.
leave it permanently.
Well, we hope it all works out, but certainly we look at Earthscape that your exterior property is an extension of your home,
Sure.
like an outdoor room.
Yep.
And it's important to be able to use the right materials and the right combinations.
Without a doubt. Over 40 years of experience and owning your own business. I'm sure everyone thinks that you're making a gazillion dollars and there's never any hardship or adversity or obstacles. Certainly celebrating the success of your company and your history. What were some of the obstacles and adversity you faced along the way? What was the hardest part about those 30 years?
It still
40
is.
years.
It still is finding qualified employees that want to work in a blue-collar trade, aren't afraid to get their hands dirty, and enjoy with passion as much as I hold in my heart and mind, that they hold the same passion and the quality for workmanship. And keeping the folks motivated to do the work and uphold those standards is always the toughest challenge. And over the years, we've had a couple hundred employees over the years.
Sure.
And some stick. I mean, the longest one I have just entered his 20th year. He asked me where his gold watch was yesterday. And I said, this is really 20 years you've been working? So
Amazing.
Kevin Dow, you're a good
that's
man.
awesome. That's awesome.
So that's probably one of the toughest things is managing employees, keeping employees motivated and happy at work in order to provide a quality result.
And I can say as a customer, Claudia and I experienced that firsthand. It's not just website speak or something to put on a brochure. We met your employees. We worked with them with and without your presence, and they truly are just as passionate as you are. So you do have a great bunch of people and insist on that. So that's awesome.
And this is my best employee.
That's it. Well, let's move over to Amy. I want to talk to Amy here. So Amy, what is your career, your vocation? How do you spend your days?
Well, I was a city planner. I have a master's from Cornell. And then as we had our second child, it became really unaffordable with childcare. So I left planning back 30 years ago. And I was working in the home, and we had someone that took care of the kids downstairs. So I was always available if needed, and started working for Josh, not even 3 or 4 days after I gave birth to my second child.
Oh my gosh.
So he put me right to work.
Yeah.
But the good part about being at home was I had time to do a lot of volunteer work. And so that has just blossomed, and there's a lot of things that I've done in Groton and elsewhere. I'm more of a behind the scenes chick, so the worker bee.
Yeah.
So what am I working on now? I'm, for the past 2.5 years, sending boxes to Ukraine and getting a lot of support from people in Groton, so thank you so much. Costs about $40 to ship a box. So I'm collecting boxes. I'm working with the UU Church. They've helped our synagogue, Congregation Shalom in Chelmsford has had fundraisers. So it's been a great experience, meeting a lot of really kind people. And we recently put together a Ukrainian interest group So if anyone's interested,
I
get in
heard
touch
about
with
that
me.
from Vinny.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Vinny was telling me about that. And
Yeah.
thought it might even make a good future episode, perhaps. So
Yeah, that would be wonderful.
yeah, I'd love to help you out with that cause.
By the
Sure.
way, Amy, what goes in those boxes?
Toiletries, clothes, yarn, knitting needles, crocheting needles, towels, sheets.
All right. So if anyone out there wants to help, how can they get these products to you?
I have an email, which is easy, so it's helpingukraine11@gmail.com.
Awesome. I love it. Good. Thank you. And then talk to me a little bit about the other education that you do.
So I'm a Holocaust educator.
What exactly is that? I've never heard of that before.
So my family was murdered in the Holocaust, so I always wanted to do something in memory of them,
so
but I wasn't
sorry.
sure,
Yeah.
thank you, what that would be. So I started teaching like Sunday school, and then our synagogue asked if I wanted to be trained as a Holocaust educator. And I also said, what does that mean?
Right.
But we're very fortunate in Boston. In Brookline, we have Facing History in Ourselves, which teaches teachers how to teach about the Holocaust and look at genocide through like a social, more like how did it happen? Through being an upstander, bystander, being in the in group, being in the out group, and what is membership of a group? What is feeling like you're experiencing obedience, or what does that mean? So I was trained through them and stayed close contact with them. They helped with lesson plans and tools, resources.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It really is amazing because I grew up started my life in Fitchburg, Massachusetts, second half of my childhood in Leominster, and only knew my own environment. So I did not grow up in that. The only thing I knew about the Holocaust and trials and tribulations and what occurred was through textbooks, which I didn't really remember any of those lessons because I was probably too busy.
I don't think they were in there. I grew up, there was World War II was like one little paragraph,
Right.
and it wasn't even mentioned.
Right.
So it's been really rewarding. In 2015, they asked if I wanted to go to Poland and learn with an incredible group called the Forum for Dialogue. And they bring Jewish memory back to cities and towns all over Poland. Some towns were 100% Jewish, and now there's no Jews.
Wow.
So I had a great experience, and that's how Josh and I went to Poland. He met me after the project was over,
Okay.
learning was over.
Yeah. So you go to Poland. You have a history, like a family connection to Poland. So you go there to learn more, to expose yourself to the environment and the community and more history. What did you find when you got there?
Well, the program I was in started in Warsaw and ended in Krakow, which is at the very bottom of Poland. And my city that my family died in was Białystok, which is all the way up and northeast corner. So I was just going to rent a car, not knowing Polish, and drive up myself until my dad got a hold of Josh and said, there's no way you're letting her go to Poland and drive around Białystok by herself. So he agreed. He had really
I had no
interest in going to
of
Poland.
ever going to Poland in my entire life.
No?
Little did I expect or know that for the past 10 years we spend 2 to 3 weeks in Poland every summer.
Yeah. So
We'll
let's
get to that.
Yeah. So let's talk about that a little bit. So you go to Poland.
Right, it
and-
took us 2 days to drive there. Now there's an express highway that actually goes, so just much quicker from Krakow to Białystok.
Right.
But in those days, 10 years ago, we drove the coast, the edge of, not the coast, sorry, the edge of Poland that borders Ukraine. And then where my family is where it borders Belarus.
Wow.
So it took us 2 days to get there. And it was really an incredible experience to walk where my family had walked once.
Right.
I didn't even know my grandfather that I'm named for. He was his family, my mother's father's family.
Okay.
Who
And
lived in Białystok.
and then your relatives not only living there but buried there as well.
Yes. So a lot of people assume that there's burials for people who died in the Holocaust,
Right.
but they were either burned alive or there's mass graves. So we often have people that come into the cemetery saying, "Oh, my relative died during the Holocaust. Where's the site?" And it's like they didn't have graves,
Right.
or marked graves.
Right.
So we saw places there used to be like there were many synagogues in Białystok. There are 5 buildings that were once synagogues. None of them are used for synagogues any longer. And so we saw that on our tour. And then the person who gave us a tour said she had to check in on her summer camp. And we said, "Oh, where's the summer camp?" And she said, "In the cemetery." And we're like, "What? Like, what do you mean?" I didn't realize that because the places that she took us, there was no headstones. So she ended up taking us to the one remaining Jewish cemetery that has headstones in Bialystok.
Wow.
And
So now you're going there to connect, to experience it. It's a result of, quite frankly, murder, right? And unbelievable tragedy. They have a place. You didn't quite know, I imagine,
Well,
what
I know-
you were going to expect when you got there.
Right.
What did you see when you got to the cemetery?
Well, just so you know, I had no intention of looking for a cemetery because my family has no graves.
Right.
So this was something out of the box for me. And I didn't realize there were 1,200, I think it's 1,200 or 1,400 Jewish cemeteries across Poland, all of that have been abandoned because there's no Jews there any longer. So this particular cemetery had 35,000 stones at its peak. And some were taken away and used for foundations, for
On
homes.
people's personal property.
Yes.
Taking
Or-
gravestones, granite
Yes.
gravestones.
The
and then
Nazis
using
allowed
it.
the Nazis allowed people to come in and buy the larger bases and headstones.
Especially the
And,
communists.
well, the Nazis started it. The communists continued it, and some of the larger stones ended up in barn foundations, house foundations.
That is amazing.
But there's more to the story.
Right.
Well, there's an interesting story that there was a fountain in downtown Bialystok that wasn't working. When they took it apart, they found fragments of Jewish headstones. So they delivered it back to the cemetery, and it's actually sitting in a pile. And what we're hoping to do is put it along the inside wall of the cemetery, because we don't know where those fragments
Right.
belong.
Wow,
You
that's
know what a
that's amazing.
lapidarium is?
No, what is that?
So a lapidarium is where you have stones suspended from a wall. And specifically in a cemetery, a lapidarium is where you don't know where a fragment of a stone is, and there's so many broken pieces, as well as the ones that Amy was mentioning from the fountain that the Nazis built and whatnot. And sometimes people just come and they return pieces or fragments of headstones. We find them, and one of our board members, well, we haven't gotten to how the whole
I
thing
got chills
started.
right now. I got like.
But at any
goosebumps.
rate, so if it's
Because
a
they belong
fragment,
there.
if it's a fragment,
Right.
we don't know what cemetery it came from. The fragments we find within the cemetery are erected against a wall and they are hung. And when you look at it, it's a mosaic of pieces of headstone. And then you typically put a plaque up that says, these are to honor those who may have had a grave here, and it's a lapidarium.
Wow,
their graves are
that's
unknown.
amazing to me. All right, so I want to go back to the first time you visited. You walk into this cemetery. It's not being maintained or kept up. There's missing headstones. There's probably broken headstones. I'm imagining it's probably overgrown with trees at this point, or who knows what else, and if people used it for other purposes. When you saw it, what were the emotions that you experienced seeing it for the first time in that condition?
Well, for me, it was quite a shock because if you think about how cemeteries are kept here in the United States,
Right.
and they're so respected, and to see broken vodka bottles and swastikas sprayed on them, and it was just really, really disturbing.
And to have a connection to it through your family
Right.
must have been
Well,
horrible.
there wasn't necessarily a connection to the cemetery, to Amy's family, because they were murdered. And the people that are buried in this Bagnovka cemetery, which began in 1891, the lost burial in there, well, there were some in the 50s and 60s when people returned after World War II. But there are no headstones after 1941, okay?
Okay.
Because everybody that's buried in the cemetery lived their whole lives in Bialystok and died in Bialystok before the Nazis came and invaded.
Got it.
So they lived their whole lives, those who were buried there. But the devastation that occurred in the cemetery, every stone was toppled.
Right.
So we're talking, if it wasn't stolen, the 35,000 gravestones were toppled.
Yeah, and even if the family directly isn't connected to that cemetery, certainly the connection to the town and the part of it being part of the history of that town, et cetera. So now this is where the Degens just so impressed the hell out of me, and why I invited them to be on this show. It's about ordinary people achieving extraordinary success and doing things, quite frankly, they didn't have to do. Earlier you used two terms. You said you could either be a bystander or
An upstander.
an upstander. Can you what's an upstander?
So an
How would you
upstander,
define that?
I would say, decides to do something about a situation that they know is wrong or needs help, or that they can help fix.
So you don't live there.
No,
You go to a foreign land. You
can't speak Polish.
can't speak Polish. You don't really know anyone. you're in this cemetery, you see this condition, and instead of saying, what a shame, there's nothing I can do, instead, what was the first step you chose to do?
Well, I have to give that to Josh because I would never suggest that he give up his vacation every year for 2 weeks and go work. But Josh immediately saw that he could make a difference with his background. So why don't you?
So we are not the ones that began the restoration in the cemetery.
Okay.
It began in the early 2000s to mid 2000s with a group of righteous non-Jewish folks who were into restorative justice. And there was a group from Germany called ASF, along with some local Bialystok Gentiles who wanted to pay it forward and help to restore the cemetery. So they began working in the cemetery, like I said, in the early 2000s, and it got accelerated by 2010. When we arrived for the first time, it was 2015, and we went to the summer camp to see what summer camp was all about in the cemetery. Well, it ends up there was a group of about 12 individuals that were using a metal tripod with a chain in the middle, lifting 1,200 pound stones, and I watched, just scratching my head as
I'm thinking about the equipment that you have in your business back here, and you're just watching these people with chains and
I was thinking the same thing. So,
but to see it and then to just say, wow, and what did you do? What first step did you take?
So I went up to the individual who I thought was the leader of the project and tried to speak to him, and he grunted at me. And I said, does anybody here speak English? And this blonde woman came running over. I speak English. I said, oh, you're an American. She said, yes. I said, what are you doing here? She said, well, I've been translating all the stones that have been reset. And I said, how many stones have been reset? They said, since the outset of the project about 10 years ago, about 300 stones.
310 years?
So I said, you did 300 stones in 10
30 a
years?
year.
And I looked at her, I started scratching my head. I'm like, well, if you come in with some heavy equipment and you work from the aisles and not over the graves, probably do 50, 60 stones a day. I said,
Wait. They were averaging 30 a year.
Right.
yeah,
And you said they could do 50 a day.
He could do 50
I
in a
could
day.
do 50 or 60 in a day.
All right.
So finally, I said to this woman, Heidi, I said, look, I said, does this guy speak English who seems to be the head? He goes, yeah. He's just a little grumpy today. So came over and we started speaking, and he spoke pretty good English, actually. And I said, here's my phone. And I took out my smartphone. I said, I don't restore cemeteries. I set granite for a living. Mm-hmm. Here's how I lift it up. Here's the equipment I use. Here's the methodology that I use. I said, what do you do? He said, well, I run a supply house for contractors. I said, great. I said, if I come back next year, I want you to rent me one of these, and here's what I need for tools. He goes, this costs money. What are you going to do? I said, I'll raise the money. I'll bring a team of folks. You work with me. You rent this stuff.
He had the equipment?
He had the contacts who had the equipment.
Okay.
5 minutes.
Okay.
For 5 minutes, he thought about it.
Yeah.
And then, at any rate, with that said, I said, I'll come back next year. I'll raise the money. Came back home, started a GoFundMe page, raised the money, came back with a crew of Americans, including Alan Hope from Groton, Howie Flagler and his wife from Westford, and we...
Rick Mulkey's son-in-law.
Well, that Rick Mulkey, another Groton person, but that was many years down the road. At any rate, we came back, we worked with him, he got us the equipment we needed, and in 5 working days, we reset 301 stones.
Oh my God, in 5 days?
In 5 working days.
Wait, 300 stones?
301 is 60 a day.
So that would have been what, like 3 years if they,
Right.
right?
That was 10 years.
10 years
What
of
they
their
did
work.
in 10 years, we did it
10
in 5
years.
days.
That's amazing. All right, so
So-
now, because of time, because I wish it was an hour-long show, we do have a few minutes left. I do want to ask you, where's the project stand today, and how might people inquire, find out more about it?
Last year, we reset 1,018 stones in 1 year. So we've reset well in excess of 4,000 stones. The pandemic got in the way of us working for a couple years. There's a Jewish museum open now. We go back every summer. We have a 501c3 nonprofit called the Bialystok Cemetery Restoration Fund. We fundraise all year. We work all year to get the funds that we need to go rent the much larger equipment, and we have a group of between 20 and 30 volunteers that are coming with us this summer.
We have students from Suffolk University now.
Wow.
Internship students.
All right, so I'll make sure to put the website so people can see. We'll do that in post-production. What's the biggest personal reward I know you didn't do it for these reasons.
Amy
What's the
can
biggest?
tell you that.
What's the biggest personal reward that you guys have gotten out of this?
Well, I can't undo the Holocaust. I wish I could. So for me personally, to bring back Jewish memory in a city that was 50% Jewish
Right.
and now has less than 5 Jews, for me that's the reward. That people of Bialystok today understand that their history included Jewish residents, and a lot don't know that. So bringing back Jewish memory
amazing.
there is great.
And then what the people who are there that you didn't know, seeing the cemetery as it is now, relatives that visited the cemetery.
Yeah, we have an incredible database now. So Jews from around the world are coming to see their family stones.
Wow.
And that
Have you
is
ever seen that
extreme.
personally?
Yes,
Yeah?
it's incredible. It's a really incredible moment. We were all
12
cry.
times,
Yeah.
maybe more, where
Really?
people are
What is
actually
that experience like?
reunited with their ancestors'
overwhelming.
graves of a stone that we actually reset. And when they come into the cemetery and they say, you don't happen to have a stone by such and such name, well, they can search the registry, but also we can show them where the stones are.
Wow.
And so we've had a lot of reunited things.
There's a lot of stories about that. I wish we had more time.
I know. So they come in, you give them that information, and then you see their reconnection. How do you receive that?
Makes you tear up.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's-
yeah.
It's amazing.
One of the most emotional things that I've ever seen. And that's the reward.
You guys
is
are
that
awesome.
You reunite
Yeah.
somebody with their ancestors.
Yeah, you guys are amazing and did it all for none of those purposes, not knowing you were going to get that reward, that fulfillment. But Upstanders, I think that's going to be the name of this episode, Upstanders.
That's great.
But we love going to Poland now, and it's like the last place on earth I thought I'd want to go. We love Poland. We've met hundreds of people that are really
Kind.
cool, kind, compassionate, and are moved by the work that we do. And the food's great. It's a lot like Groton in Poland. It's the topography. It's an agrarian nation.
Yeah.
If you're a vegetarian, you do real well in Poland, believe it or not.
Especially if you like beets.
Yes. So it's really cool, and we look forward to going every summer.
So the key here is you didn't have to do it, and most people wouldn't have done it. So thank you for being upstanders, a word that I'm happy to add to my own vocabulary. And I always end the show Goal Time with an inspirational quote, give other people hope or a call to action. What is a quote
That drives
you
us?
have that drives you that might inspire others?
So there's a quote by a famous rabbi, Rabbi Hillel, who says, if you're not for yourself, who will be for me? If you're only for yourself, who are you? And if not now, when?
Oh man, I love it.
Right.
Oh my
So
gosh.
that has always inspired me.
You guys are truly amazing people. Everyone has a story, and yours is just remarkable. Thank you for being upstanders and making this world a better place. This world is better because you exist.
Think if everyone did one project, how our world would change.
Say that again.
I said, if everyone did one project they were passionate about to improve the world, how our world would change.
We can end it
Heal
there.
the world.
Heal the world.
Heal the world. It starts with you, Michael Jackson, "Man in the Mirror." Right? That's one of my favorite songs by him. I like the lyrics. That's it. That is Goal Time. That's what the show is all about. I'm hoping that you see this, you get inspired, you take up action. You take up action. Be an upstander. Find your passion. Find something that bugs you, that makes you angry when you watch the news, and then, damn it, do something about it. Thank you for watching Goal Time.